Well, here's the setup. Now, I didn't show the beginning of making this because it was just basically laying out, boring it, doing that type of thing. But what I've done is I took my stock, mounted it in here, I faced the end and center drilled it, put a live center in to support it, skimmed off the outer surface for 1.25 inches, 1.5 inches, whatever the case may be. I want an inch long part. And then I went ahead and knurled it with a live center in the back. The reason I knurled it first is because I wanted that extra support. I've knurled that and then relieved a little bit. What I've done after that is I went ahead, pulled my tailstock out. I have drilled it out to as big as I had, which was I think 1.125 inches. And then I went ahead and bored the minor diameter of the threads to the smaller size inside, and I've cut a 1/4 inch relief on the back to clear the unthreaded portion on the Atlas spindle. So I've got a threading tool set up upside down here in the tool post, so we'll thread on the back side of it, and we'll just go ahead and run her through here and see if we can't get some threads in here to match our plug gauge. So we'll run back up, make sure we are zeroed out, because we want to thread this to just over 1 inch. I've drilled it and reamed it to just about 1.5 inches, so we'll run threads to about 1.25 inches, someplace in there, just to make sure after 1 inch we can start backing them out. I just want to make sure we've got enough thread there. So we're going to say that's 0 right there. Let's shift us into back gear. Still set up for 8 threads per inch, and I think we are good to go. Let's see, let's just do a dry run here. Well, we're just kind of running through threading the internal bore of this. Now, this is all cosmetic, basically. We want to protect the spindle nose, but this isn't like we're fitting up a back plate or doing anything there that's going to really be important. So we want our threads to be a pretty decent fit, and here we're just going through, beveling the edges a little bit, kind of polishing them up just to make it a little bit smoother. We want a nice fit on it. Here we're going to go ahead, part it off. We've got threads in the relief cut, so that matches up with our plug gauge. I didn't show that, but that's what we've done. So here we're just going to part it off, and once we get it parted off, why, we'll go back and we're just opening up this cut. And I think I actually took this over to the saw, cut it off there, and then we bring it back over and set it back up in the lathe again so we can turn the other end. Here we're just cutting a little bevel, so that bevel's already on there, even though later on we'll go back and turn this off. We're going to contour the front end of that spindle nose quite a bit. The intention here was, I thought I was just going to part it off and just put a bevel there. Back up in the forejaw, and here I'm just going to rough zero it out. The only important thing here is we'll go ahead and put the spindle nose that we've already cut the threads on. We'll set that on there, and then we'll zero the outer edge of that because that was already contoured to match the internal threads. So this is just a rough zero it a little bit and get it close. Like I say, it doesn't even have to be exact here because we're going to zero it out a little bit more. So here, thread protector is going on. There again, matches up. I butted it up against the forejaw, thinking that that's going to be relatively straight. There again, this isn't a back plate or the back of a chuck, so it doesn't have to be exact. I am going to go ahead, zero out center up the spindle nose and the forejaw on that outer diameter. That outer diameter was already turned to match the internal threads. So we'll get it zeroed out, and then we're just going to cut our contour on it. Some guys are advocating using 2 chuck keys on your forejaw chuck and everything. I guess that works fine for me. It's just as easy to take one and alternate back and forth to get it pretty close. This is a little Noga indicator holder. I really like this little holder for this. I use it for centering up barrels both on the front of in the front like I'm doing right here, or anything I want to center out. But if I'm running a barrel to thread the muzzle, for example, on there, well, I've got a spider on the back of the spindle, so I use this little indicator to zero it on both ends of it. It works real well. But this little indicator holders are relatively inexpensive indicator holder. Got a pretty good magnetic base and everything for a sight. Links for this will be in the description below if you're interested in them. And there we go. We're zeroed out pretty much. I didn't really get zoomed in there to show that, but looks like it's wobbling all over the place. But that's because it's just saw cut on the front. Once we get that squared off, why it's zeroed up real nice. Checking my length, making sure we've got that inch, and I left just a little more than an inch on there. It just protrudes a little bit farther over. Now once we get this squared up, why everything else I do to this is just cosmetic on the outside. I want it fairly narrow, especially at the nose of the spindle, because anything left there could potentially interfere with especially the cross-slide tooling. There's not a whole lot of room when you set up these small lathes like this to have your tooling and your cross-slide, both of the cut-off and your tool bits in the front. So you want it to be fairly narrow in the front. Other than that, it's just aesthetics. Once I get squared up, what I ended up and did, rather than just rounded it, is I swung the compound around and just contoured it to match. And I adjusted the compound over several times just to get a nice even taper, so it kind of matched the blank area on the back side of the knurling. Has got about the same length on the front side, and I just narrowed down the front. So we just kept moving the compound around to get a nice angle. It looked pretty good, looked fairly even to my eyes anyway, and that was all it is. That's all there is to it. This was, I think, probably about the first adjustment to the compound. I ended up and slid that compound, or swung that compound around about 3 times to get about as closest to the chuck as I could to the forejaw. There, we're in pretty tight, and that gives me the angle that I wanted. And that's all I'm after, is that aesthetically pleasing look, something that matches up pretty nice and looks pretty good to my eyes anyway. Here we're just moving it over to the mill. I want a hole, and we're just popping a 1/4 inch hole in here to accept a spanner wrench. This is still the 3/8 mill that I had in the collet from when, in the mill from when I last used it. And all I'm doing is I just dropped it down. It's got a good service, and all we need is 1/4 inch hole. There's nothing special about this. We want it to be relatively well centered up, so I can quite easily do that just with the tape or with a rule, and that's plenty close for a spanner nut hole or a spanner wrench hole. You know, if we were doing it any different, if we wanted equidistant holes around it or something, we'd set it up different. But For this application, it works just fine. We center drilled it there. We're going to run a 1/4 inch hole through it, and we'll bevel the outer edge of it so it looks appealing. Clean up the inner a little bit, the inner where it cuts through the threads, and that's all there is to it. You know, pretty quick, simple, and we're just about done here. There we are. You know, that's all it takes, other than putting a little finish on it at some point. Okay, well, we're back at the lathe. Here's our little spindle nose protector. Got it drilled for our little spanner wrench. Sits on there just like that. And we have a spindle nose protector. Now, next time I blue, I'll throw it in the bluing tanks. There we are. We're just a little bit long. I left it a little bit long intentionally just because it doesn't really matter. Maybe it will give a little bit more protection to the collet adapter that's in there. I thought about making it longer to encapsulate the adapter, but it's retained by a set screw anyway, so I'm not concerned about that. And it looks good. That'll work well. One more part of the puzzle done. So hopefully you found something a little bit useful there. If you did, you might want to hit that subscribe button. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And any comments or suggestions, leave them for me in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.